Hey, what's up, you guys? This is Stardust, the new WHATIVER, and welcome back to another video. Um, Needless to say, it's been a little while. You know, it's it's definitely been a time coming. Um, I missed you all, but it kind of got to a point where I was burnt out from all of the videos that I was making. And I don't know if I forgot to tell you. Uh, I actually, this is my second channel that I was making. My first one got banned, as some of you may know from, the original channel if you came from the original channel. But I came back and I grinded like really, really hard. So I think that kind of burnt me out. But obviously a friend of mine, kind of smacked me into some, common sense and told me that, what I was able to do with the channel was pretty amazing, especially for someone my age. So if you want to thank somebody, thank AAG Demon. You can check out his channel. I'll link it inside of the description. So without a further ado, let's get into it. So look, right, inside of the beginning of Izuku's life, he was a pretty happy kid, to say the least. He was really into pro heroes and all of their work, even rookie heroes and vigilantes, kind of jotting down their abilities and cross-referencing them to each other and seeing their weaknesses and strengths, and even writing down ways that they could improve it. Even with him being as prone that he was to watching superhero media, there was one superhero that he was the biggest fan of. And that was All Might. All Might was seen inside of Japan and all the rest of the world as the symbol of peace, which kind of made Izuku want to become something like that. But unfortunately, as he found out on his birthday around elementary school, he figured out that he was quirkless, which kind of shattered all of those dreams instantaneously. You can't be a hero if you have no way of protecting yourself against people that can fly, throw cars, like scale up buildings in an instant. It was almost impossible. Everybody inside of his life tried to tell him that it was impossible and to give up on his dream. And Inka, his mom, felt very guilty about it. Somehow she felt responsible for it, since the fact that he didn't have a gene or he didn't have a quirk had to do with maybe something involving her genes, or maybe just blatant bad luck. Maybe something that she did in her life that kind of messed up the entire way that everything in his life would go on from that point. And that kind of broke her and Izuku for a while. It caused Izuku to just be locked inside of his room watching All Might videos, and it even caused Inko to stress eat and gain a bunch of weight, which eventually inside of their life drove off his dad. Now, inside of this version, his dad was, inside the beginning, a very good dad, but he was also very big on heroes. He was very big on power dynamics and more or less just being powerful. His ability wasn't all that powerful, but what he wanted at the very least was for his son to maybe change that ability, or at the very least become a support hero. But with him being basically labeled as quirkless, it was almost impossible to happen. Something that's never been seen from this point. So that kind of caused him to walk out and abandon his family as a whole. Even though Deku was broken for a while, he somehow, even with his level of like almost obsession with heroes, was able to bring himself to still strive to be a hero, even if he is quirkless, and push himself to a certain extent to become powerful enough for people to take him seriously. If not, maybe even become a police officer and just help out. But one thing that stayed with him even after figuring out that he was quirkless was the fact of him finding different abilities that heroes had and kind of writing them down. My bad, the video cut out. But like I was saying, one thing that really stayed with him and one thing that he kept doing was thinking about different ways that he could use his abilities. Like, for example, if he had the strength of All Might, there was different ways that he could use them. Maybe even using the force that he let off just from the power of his hits to be able to slow himself down from falling if he didn't have a durability-based power that could save him. Or, for example, being able to use a firepower similar to a jet to be able to fly around. Different ways that he could use these abilities to become better than what he is naturally. If he was a hero, the number one thing that he would stay with is being able to use his abilities better than any other hero. Whether he was a rookie, a pro, or even a vigilante, he'd be one of the best heroes. His number one job would be protecting people before getting anything like clout or fame, money, anything like that. People come first. So one day he goes back home after the average day of ass whooping and beatings that he normally goes through. And he gets back home. So as he gets back home, he, kicks off his shoes and everything. And he sees his mom, Inko, there. As he walks in and everything, he says, "Hey, what's up, Mom?" She looks back at him and she says, "How was school?" As, he kind of flips his hoodie over his head, kind of trying to hide a gash that he has on the top of his head and even moving his hair down. As, he kind of looks at her as he kind of says, it was fine. Everything went like normal. As, Inko kind of looks at him as she frowns, as she says, "They're not hurting you anymore, right? All of the bullying and everything else stopped after the conference, right?" As, he kind of shrugs as he says, "Of course it did. I mean, nobody would be idiotic enough to go out of their way to cause more trouble after getting in trouble the first time, especially without using or with using their quirk inside of an unsanctioned way. That's serious legal trouble, and they could get really, in really, really bad trouble for that." As, she kind of looks at him as, she has a moment of suspicion, but she kind of shrugs as she says, "Make sure you put on something new." As, while he's about to head up to his room, he says, "What do you mean?" As, she kind of looks at him and she says, "You remember I told you last week we have a doctor appointment?" So he kind of looks at her as he says, "You didn't tell me anything about a doctor appointment." And she says, "Well, you have one now. It's important to constantly get checked up. You don't know what could be wrong with you. And also, we have to get you your vaccines for next year." As, he kind of just looks at her. As, he sighs, kind of mentally throwing away the plan to write down different quirks and abilities that he saw at school and different ways that he would use them inside of a kind of AU book that he's been creating for himself. As he kind of shrugs, not really thinking too much on it. As he goes up to his room and everything. As After that happens, right? He kind of puts on some clothes, a nice cool fit, um, wife beater, t-shirt, some shorts. He makes sure to get himself ready and everything. And he goes ahead and, heads down. As Inko kind of looks at him as she says, "What were you getting so ready for? I thought you were already dressed before school." As, he kind of looks at her. He says, "Yeah, I just want to do some extra things, take care of myself and everything. Make sure that I looked and smelled good." As, she kind of smiles as she teasingly says, "Are you trying to impress the young ladies that are inside of your year?" As he kind of rolls his eyes as he says, "I mean, not necessarily." As he kind of heads down the stairs. As she kind of gestures for him outside the house as he walks up and opens up the front door with her. They get into the car and they head over. And as they kind of head over and everything like that, Izuku's just kind of sitting inside the back seat of the car, kind of just drifting off into space, kind of dissociating a little bit. And as he's kind of dissociating and everything like that, he kind of is just thinking to himself, if I had a quirk, I'd only use it for good. As, he kind of puts his hands up as he, starts praying. But out of embarrassment a little bit, he's trying to, hide it so that his mom doesn't think too much of it. As he kind of says to himself, God, or whatever God that's inside of the sky, or even within another dimension, I promise, if you give me the ability to do something, anything to help people, beyond just the regular ability of what a regular police officer could do, so I could really go out of my way to help someone and really save them, to be a real hero, I promise that I'll only use those abilities to protect people. And if I'm lying, God strike me down right now. As he kind of opens his eyes, as Inko kind of, looks over at him and she says, "You okay?" So he kind of laughs a little bit as he says, "Yeah, I just kind of had a headache or whatever." As Inko kind of, looks over at him and she says, "Why are you acting so weird?" As, he says, "I'm not really acting weird, I'm just trying something new." As Inko kind of, looks over at him, gives him like a loving smile, being the supporting mother that she is. And after she gives that supporting smile, she looks back at the road as Izuku's eyes go wide. As he screams at the top of his lungs, "Look out!" And as soon as he says that, they get T-boned on the driver's side of the car. As the car flips over 10 times down a hill off the side of the road. And when I say off the side of the road, I mean off the road, down a ditch, damn near a cliff. As this happens, everything goes black inside of an instant. There's no pain, there's no second to think. It's just dark silence. Izuku wakes up to the sound of beeping. As he kind of lifts up, as he grabs his head, wondering if it was some type of weird fever dream or something. As he checks around him, as he sees that apparently he's inside of a hospital. And as he kind of looks up, he sees a scared nurse kind of, flinch away as she kind of runs off into onto the side as Izuku's kind of just looking at this, just honestly confused as hell. He doesn't know what's happening. As when he's confused, he kind of pulls the cover off of himself and gets out of bed. And as soon as he does that, he realizes that he's covered in tons of bandages. As he's looking at them, just in shock, as his eyes slowly widen, as he realizes everything that he experienced, everything that he thought was a dream, really happened. As soon as he thinks of that, he instantly bolts out of the room. As he bolts out of the room, he slams straight past a nurse, not knocking her over, but almost hitting her. Almost too perfectly dodging past a nurse and a doctor. As when the doctor tries to call out to him, he's not listening. He's running down the halls, opening doors, trying to get in. Nurses are trying to, get him off, but it's almost like he just doesn't even feel them, like trying to pry him away. And as all of this is happening, he's checking door from door from door from door from door from door. And as he's checking door from door, he's getting more and more emotional. He's thinking to himself all the time he spent inside of his room, writing inside of journals, thinking about quirks, not even coming down for dinner, just not spending time with his family. As he's thinking to himself over and over, I'll redo it. I'll redo it. I'll redo it. I'll do better this time. As it's almost like he's breaking down inside of his head, not being able to find his mother anywhere inside of the hospital. As finally, a doctor stops him. So he tries to pull away from the doctor, but he realizes the doctor's grip is almost like iron. As he looks down, as he sees the man's hand is literally turned into a metallic like metal substance. As he kind of looks at him, as he kind of screams, "Get off me, I need to find my mom." As the doctor says, "Calm down." As he's breathing hard, he's trying to calm himself down, but his pulse is just going. And as the doctor kind of looks at him reassuringly, he says, "Calm down, everything is fine." As he kind of looks at the doctors, he says, "What do you mean everything is fine? We got into a car accident. Where's my mom? I checked every room on this floor." As he says, "Your mom is fine. She's stable. She's on another floor. We had to move her to another floor because that car accident that y'all got into, I don't know if you were conscious long enough to realize, but that turned into a pileup. There's over 29 patients inside of this one floor alone. We couldn't place your mother here because her injuries were serious, but not as life-threatening as other people's injuries." As, he kind of looks at the doctors. He says, then what happened?" As the doctor breathes in and breathes out, as he says, "Look, some dumb drunk driver smashed into you. That caused you to smash into another car and flip. That car went into another car, and so on and so forth. Your car rolled all the way off of the road, off the side of a cliff. You should be lucky you and your mother are alive." As he says, "Wait, what do you mean off the side of a cliff?" As he says, "Off the side of a cliff. That was a literal 50-foot drop." As his kind of heart drops into his stomach as he looks at him, as he says, How am I not hurt?" So he says, "You were." As Izuku kind of looks at him in shock as he says, "What do you mean were? How long has it been?" So the doctor, calms him down as he says, it's only been 3 days. So he says, 3 days? As, he kind of nods as he says, it was very serious, but your quirk was able to save you. As, he kind of looks at him as he's like, what do you mean, quirk? What do you mean by that? I don't have a quirk. As the doctor looks at him as he says, no, you most definitely do have a quirk. Are you okay? Are you experiencing amnesia? As he says, no, I'm not experiencing amnesia. I know exactly where we are. As he says his exact location, the exact location of his mom, his house, everything that he knows. As he says, when I was 4 years old, I was told that I did not have any quirk. Not one, not even something stupid. I lacked the bone that they needed to even develop a quirk. As, the doctor's kind of looking at him as he says, well, that just can't be right. As he says, what do you mean that can't be right? So he says, well, the doctor says, look, you broke over 40 bones around your body. Every rib in your chest, every bone in your arms, every bone in your legs, and your neck was snapped. Honestly, the healing abilities of your healing factor are some of the best we've ever heard of. But it was inside of its strongest state. I don't know whether that was to save your life or whether your healing factor is passively this strong. So he says, I'm telling you, I don't have a quirk. As, the doctor says, okay, I believe you. Calm down. As, Izuku kind of, breathes. So he says, did my mom get out? So he says, your mom is fine. All she experienced was really some whiplash and a few broken bones. She's not going to die. As he kind of looks at him as he kind of says, then where's my mom? As the doctor kind of sighs. As skip over a couple of minutes, Izuku's looking at his mom laying inside of a nursing bed. As he kind of looks at the doctors, he says, I thought you said that she was going to live. So he says, she will live. I didn't lie about it. Just calm. As, Izuku's trying to calm himself down, but now he's breathing hard as he says, your mother, something must have happened to her brain. Or maybe something inside of her body isn't allowing her to wake up because she's been in this coma for the 3 days that you were inside of a coma. He says, what do you mean? How? The same way that you got hurt. She woke up once, but past that point, we haven't seen her wake up again. And that was only for about 20 minutes to ask about you. And it was almost mechanical, like she fell back unconscious. As, Izuku kind of takes a few steps back and leans on the wall. As he kind of, runs his hands through his hair. As, he's kind of breathing hard. As he says, how long is this going to last? As the doctor says, as far as what we could tell from what we're able to find, it could be as long as a year or more. As Izuku kind of, looks at him as he says, what do you mean a year? So he says, I mean a year. She could be in this coma for that long. As, Izuku kind of falls to the ground as his knees give out like jelly. As he's kind of breathing, holding his head. As he kind of looks at him as he says, I think I should give you a minute to process this information. as Izuku kind of gets angry a little bit as he looks over at the doctor as he says, "Who did this?" As the doctor looks back at Izuku as he says, "Even if you wanted to do something, the man that caused all of this died upon contact with your car." As Izuku kind of starts to get more frustrated, almost like sanity cracking inducingly angry, as he kind of breathes out as his hands ball up into fists, and he kind of clutches the edge of the sheets on his mother's bed. So look, right? Time skip. Over the past, I'll say 3 months, Izuku has been visiting his mom daily and figuring out about his abilities. So, as far as what he can tell, on his base abilities, at his strongest, he's about 4 times stronger than the average human, 10 times faster, overall way more durable, and his endurance is almost, to him, ungodly. He's never been able to run even a mile, but now he's able to run almost quintuple that distance, and maybe even more. As far as what he scans from his abilities, he has 4 abilities he does know about. First off, his strength. His strength scales with his bones, which means he doesn't have to worry about his body breaking down from him overexerting himself. His speed is faster than what any physical human is able to bring up on base. He's even faster than some of the lower ranked speedsters in the world. Actually, it's very impressive how fast he is, but he is that fast. Not only does his body absorb kinetic energy, it's also extremely resistant against cutting or stabbing based attacks. His endurance isn't just inside the sense of his stamina. It's inside of his pain and his overall fatigue. He builds less fatigue toxins, which allows him to physically exert himself as far as what he normally does. And his pain tolerance is a lot higher than what it is normally. You can't get stabbed or anything and just be completely fine. But if he was to get punched or even experience some of Bakugo's like weaker to weakest explosions, instead of them feeling extremely painful now, they're more like very annoying mosquito bites. He has a few other abilities that he has, but as far as the doctors can tell, those are the main ones that he has. The amazing thing about him is he didn't just unlock one quirk. He actually unlocked 2. His next ability is he gained the ability to be able to make constructs or things like metal and different effects on the lower levels. So, for example, he's able to make something called Xerillium. And Xerillium is a extremely strong metal. What it basically has the ability to do is the more that the blades begin to react to friction. So let's say, for example, he was to create some kunai or some shuriken or even a sword. The more friction that hits the blade or the metal in general, the faster it gets and the less, weirdly enough, the less wind resistance it has, making it so that the weapons that he uses are able to move throughout the air very quickly and very efficiently. Overall, making them a lot better than what they would be on base. With that, these abilities, as far as what he can tell, can last about 10 minutes if he really pushes himself. But pushing himself could cause very, very, very serious injuries. As far as what they can tell, they're still like experimenting with Izuku's abilities, but those are the base abilities. He also has a very, 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 very powerful healing factor. His healing factor isn't as powerful now after the accident, but it is still pretty strong for what he does have. So it's not like he has a weak healing factor by any means. So for the most part, for the first month and a half, people kind of left him alone after that entire situation inside of school. He got about 2 weeks off of school because of that entire issue, to which he used to study his abilities and try and figure out ways that he could potentially even help his mom. Thinking about if he could, use his abilities inside of a way that could help her. Since they don't know the fullest extent of his abilities, they don't know what he can actually do fully. With that, it's also the sense of he was also able to make the news lines. Izuku's abilities overall are amazing. He has more than one quirk, which is almost never heard of, and his body is able to handle the level of stress that those quirks put themselves under, which is even more amazing. But for the most part, that's basically what happened between those parts. The only person that didn't really abide by these rules was Bakugo. Bakugo didn't care how hurt he was or even how messed up what he was going through was. He didn't treat him any differently. If he pissed him off, he still, created an explosion inside of his face. He would punch him, kick him, slap him. But Izuku never gave him the chance to do any of those things. As far as people could tell, Izuku would sometimes still nerd out, but his eyes would almost have an emptiness within them. An emptiness into which he didn't have before. That and the fact that he didn't cry as much anymore. So, for the most part, people kind of realized that the entire issue that happened with his mom really changed him. Because most people would look at Izuku and see that maybe he's a lost cause. But after the accident, it seemed like he was a regular person. Nobody really tested him or anything like that because he didn't know how stable he was. Into which he wasn't very at all. So, needless to say, for right now, I think that's where I'm going to leave it. If you enjoyed this video, or any of the other videos that I made, because this is the first video I made, but depending on what y'all put on the polls, depending on which one I release. If you guys are still here, I do know that I still have some viewers, so it's not a situation where I just have no one on my, channel. So I'm not too worried about it. But I know you guys don't really check the community as much. You guys already know how I am. Like and subscribe if you want to. The Discord is underneath. We do things like D&D. We play games occasionally. Don't expect too much because that's really all we for real do. Sometimes we talk. If you want to speak to me about anything involving ideas or videos that you want, put them in the comments if you want to. My DMs are always open on Discord, so if you do join the server, make sure to text, call, whatever. I'm happy to speak to any of y'all. And yeah, it was really fun seeing y'all again, or talking to y'all again. So I guess I'll see y'all. Bye.